Hello everyone, my name is James Carlosari and I am presenting my group's strategic review project on the Ford Motor Company. The other group members are Alan, Corinne, Sarah, and Tony for the Management 590 class at Washington State University with Professor Doug Miller and Professor Creek. To give you some background on the Ford Motor Company, it was founded in 1903 by Henry Ford, who was known for innovation in early manufacturing, especially with the assembly line, which he used to create the Model T. By 1923, Ford produced half of the U.S. vehicles. It is currently the fourth largest car manufacturer globally, and it uses its key resources to continue to dominate in its market share in technology, design and manufacturing facilities, logistics and distribution channels, sales and marketing teams, and global personnel. The Ford Motor Company strategy. So the plan, which was in October 2020, Ford introduced the plan to turn around their automotive business. The Ford's production strategy is implemented through utilizing plants across the globe that are specialized for specific production tasks, such as assembly and stamping. Ford's distribution strategy is implemented through improving and maintaining leadership groups and dealerships throughout the global market. Many people may recognize the phrase associated with their trucks, "Built Ford Tough." Ford's main target market is towards blue-collar workers who want a durable truck. However, they have created their Lincoln brand of vehicles to showcase luxury and differentiate them from Ford-branded vehicles. The R&D team at Ford has set a strategic decision to invest in batteries. Investing in batteries will help them scale to their production needs to make sure they are keeping costs down as they produce more electric vehicles. Now we move into the external environments affecting Ford. There are currently 6 external environments, and the first one is political. The COVID-19 pandemic led to many supply chain issues in multiple industries, including the auto industry. The auto industry was hit by a semiconductor chip shortage, and President Biden ordered a 100-day review of the issue, and his administration began putting protections in place, such as encouraging U.S. manufacturers to start making chips in the U.S. with tax credits. The next external environment is economic. The U.S. dollar took a hit during the pandemic with a low of $89.93 in December 2020. It is now raising again in 2021 and is currently at $92.10. A strong US dollar leads to cheaper foreign imports, which can increase competition by making foreign cars cheaper to sell in the US, as well as these automakers ramping up production due to lower costs and increased revenue from selling in the US. A strong US dollar also makes exports more expensive, which will increase costs for Ford exports. And there is opportunity for Ford to capitalize on increased disposable income for the US population, who may use that to buy new cars. Next, we have socioculture. In 2018, Ford predicted the shift from compact to SUVs and reallocated $7 billion in funding for cars to SUVs. In May 2021, Ford had invested $22 in electrification through 2025 to become a leader in the electric vehicle market in order to keep up with consumer demand for the electric vehicles. Next is technological. Consumers are becoming more familiar with electric vehicles, especially with the popularity of Tesla. The Mach-E, which is Ford's new electric Mustang, has a range up to 305 miles and can go to 0 to 60 in up to 3.5 seconds, which is rivaling many Tesla vehicles. Next, we have legal. So in 2018, the popular Ford Escape scored the worst safety rating amongst 7 small sport utility models. Safety regulations can be a threat to Ford if government regulations make safety features harder to pass. Modifications to existing product lines can impact the way the car looks and also increase production costs if certain car parts need to be removed or redesigned. And manufacturers can face costly recalls and lawsuits if their safety features fail. Lastly, we have is environmental. According to the EPA in 2019, 82% of all transportation greenhouse gas emissions were from light to heavy-duty vehicles, and transportation makes up to 29% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So Ford has responded to this threat by abiding by the guidelines in the Paris Climate Agreement, making a commitment to be carbon neutral by 2050 and investing in its hybrid vehicle lineup. Now we are going to get into the Porter's 5 forces. The first one is the bargaining power of buyers. This is relatively high because private consumers are Ford's primary buyers. The large customer base means there's a low buyer threat for Ford's customers. Ford's customers make long-term purchases, which means they have a higher power. Switching costs are very low for buyers. And a high level of consumer preference means that consumers are prone to switch more often. Ford focuses mainly on their dealerships to sell their vehicles. So if the dealerships are struggling, Ford will be struggling. Next, we have bargaining power of suppliers. This is a relatively low threat or moderate in the industry. There are numerous different parts that lead to numerous suppliers. Large number of suppliers in the industry means the lower the power they have. Supply chain management by Ford allows for strong negotiations with suppliers. And then there's firms that compete for Ford's business, which lowers their power. The third threat is the threat of new entrants. This is relatively low because there's a large upfront capital costs, making new entrants unlikely. New entrants lack brand equity and distribution networks needed to sell vehicles. Government policies and legislation increase barriers to entrance. High barriers prevent new entrants from entering the auto industry. The next threat is threat of substitute products. This is also relatively low. Gas prices increase in metropolitan areas, push people towards public transportation. Automobiles remain a stalwart as the primary form of transportation. Nothing is truly comparable to automobiles, I should say, until the public transportation or a different form of transportation takes over. Vehicles will still be around for the time being. The last force is the Rivalry. This is relatively high. The automotive industry is very competitive, thus difficult for firms to generate marketing advantage. Each company positions itself in a differentiated manner, so either luxury, electric vehicles, hybrids, there's so many different options in different companies and brands for competition. And the auto industry is increasing rivalry daily, mainly in the electric vehicle market, like Tesla entering the market. It's a pretty new company, just shaking up the industry altogether. In conclusion, Ford is able to combat these forces via effectively establishing barriers to safeguard their competitive advantage, achieving high economies of scale, providing high-quality products at competitive prices, obtaining bargaining powers of suppliers and buyers, creating strong brand recognition and global dominance. So now we go to the competitive analysis, so the market overlap. Ford's biggest competition is General Motors, Toyota, and Daimler AG. Engage in design, development, production, and marketing of cars, trucks, and automobile parts. GM, Toyota, and Daimler all compete in North America, Asia, Pacific, Middle East, Africa, and South America. Ford is mainly segmented to the United Kingdom automobile market industry and doesn't market to countries they find harder to sell in. Ford has been seeing a decline in automotive sales in North America and worldwide. As Ford uses one shared market, they turn to expand in another. There are a lot of similarities between Ford and their competitors. So Ford, GM, and Toyota all have separate brands that are more luxurious and upscale. But Daimler owns Mercedes-Benz, which is solely the luxury market for cars. Ford, GM, and Toyota are measured as like the good quality, reliable vehicles as their main brands for the average buyer. Ford, GM, and Toyota are pressured for cost leadership in their generic business strategy, so cheap cars that last a long time. When comparing to other business models for its competitors, GM appears the most similar, but there are some key differences. Both American companies, they are the two largest automakers in the US, but Ford has a higher market share globally. Both companies plan to continue to focus on newer technologies to create safer driving and lower emissions. GM was the earlier adopter in the electric vehicle and hybrid market with the Chevrolet Volt. But in recent years, Ford started producing hybrids and is producing electric vehicles as well. So continuing on with the competitive analysis, competitor interactions. So the overall safety, environmental sustainability, and the future of autonomous vehicles are the key drivers among the companies in the auto industry that Ford must compete with. Between its competitors, Ford is struggling. It doesn't have the most total sales, which belongs to Toyota. Daimler has the highest revenues. Even in the US with GM is outperforming Ford in unit sales. Cost fluctuations vary across all four companies. Ford and GM costs continually decrease from 2018 to 2020. The large decrease in costs between 2019 and 2020. This is to be blamed or possibly potentially due to the pandemic. The effects of COVID-19 are still making impacts on the world, and the automotive industry is struggling with failing sales and profit margins, which are creating a very volatile market. The key problem for Ford is production issues. Their quality control is leading to recalls. Other issues is supply chain and company response time to macro environmental factors. High demand and low supply of microchips, along with the pandemic, causing delays. So recommendations are to retrain workers and establish new guidelines. Partner with higher quality suppliers. Hire workers from competitors for their knowledge and experience. Implementation for these solutions is develop KPIs, also known as key performance indicators, in various departments to measure performance and reach quality goals. Production, use KPIs to measure products that are correctly produced the first time without any recalls or modifications. In supply chain, use KPIs to measure defects from suppliers to improve quality control. And in recruiting, use KPIs to measure diverse work experience. Lastly, as the potential issues, retraining workers is not guaranteed to end the recalls, and Ford cannot attract enough experienced workers from competitors. Thank you for listening to this presentation on the